Cleveland School of Cannabis presents the Cannabis Marketplace, where the cannabis industry and community connect. Today, the Cleveland School of Cannabis is starting a new series of cannabis community interviews and educational talks. This is where education builds nations. Cannabis extraction is a growing field of incredible influence in the cannabis industry. Today, we have a CO2 extraction specialist to give us a wealth of knowledge. Welcome, Joe Hatfield from Forever Green Advisory Services. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, absolutely. I'm happy to be here, Bridget.
So why don't we start with just what is extraction?
So basically, when we talk about extraction, what we're looking at is we're separating desired chemical compounds from the plant material and eliminating inert plant material. And typically in this industry, specifically, we're targeting cannabinoids. And so there are many methods of extraction available. CO2 happens to be one that I specialize in.
Very good. And so you have a vast experience with extraction. Tell us how you got started and what Forever Green Advisory Services offers.
Sure. I started as a machinist. Actually, my background is as a machinist, and that 20 years background doing that, always with a passion for cannabis as medicine, understanding that. I started working for a company in Johnstown, Ohio that manufactures CO2 equipment, Apex Supercritical. I'd been manufacturing parts for them prior to that, but I had reached out to them through Facebook, kind of got an interest in what they were doing, and I basically found an opportunity there as a machinist and started there in 2015. With them, I got to learn quite a bit about how these systems operate and how they work. Was very fortunate with the company to be able to progress out of the machine shop and into actually testing the equipment. That role was an R&D role, or a testing role, I should say, I'm sorry, testing the equipment. I did that for about a year, and then after that I had an opportunity to come up in engineering for research and development. And the research and development is where things really started to take off for me, because I got hands-on with the systems and really got to operate the system, and with not just cannabis, but all types of botanical material. Essential oils and extraction has been around for many years, well before this. So getting my hands on different material in there and understanding the processes was one aspect of that. The other big one was having the opportunity to travel the country and work side by side with people in the industry. And that's where I really got to understand what's involved with, pre-processing through processing the plant material, and especially specializing in post-processing. So teaching people how to develop end products was very important for me as well. And then once that opportunity was put in front of me, it was just a matter of running with every other opportunity that was placed in front of me.
Very good.
Really, the big connection where I really found my passion for helping people was when I got to reach out with the school. And they reached out to Apex Supercritical to begin with. And when the Cleveland School of Cannabis wanted to bring down their first class for a field trip, was my opportunity to have a group of people in the lab and being able to go over the process and show them how these things work. It definitely, a light bulb went off for me at that moment, I think. It's like I really enjoy teaching and I have a passion for that. So it was a really good outlet.
So you have the opportunity to teach at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, and you have the opportunity to instruct people that are actually trying to start up their own processing facilities.
Absolutely.
Very
yes.
good.
And I found that there's a lot of different types of people entering this space. I think obviously we know hemp and CBD are two huge buzzwords right now. A lot of people want to get involved with it. There are a lot of corporate, there's a lot of big money. There's a lot of people who just want to get involved for the money. The people that I've tended to deal with and work with and specialize with are the guys who have been successful in other areas in life, but they want to venture into this. They don't necessarily have the tens of millions of dollars in financial backing, but they've worked hard enough where they can come up with a few $100,000 to put together their system. And that's where I step in and help them formulate the plan on what it's going to take to get this lab built, and just work with them at that point.
Very good. So there are a lot of misconceptions about what is extraction and processing. People are concerned about chemicals and additives. Tell us, what is processing 101?
Sure. Well, I mean, from the very beginning, let's look at the basics. I mean, processing has been happening for thousands of years. This is nothing new. It started, I think the very basic form we could probably talk about would be a charas, is just a hand-rubbed extraction, literally taking the live plant. And this is a technique that was mastered and probably still being done in India. And they start just hand rubbing live plant. And what happens is you end up with this resin in your hands, and they can end up taking that and put it into a big ball. That's the simplest form of extraction. And you can go from that into a mechanical extraction. And those are techniques that are considered solventless extraction. So there is no solvent used on those whatsoever. Those extractions, a very basic one that a lot of people may understand would be, you've heard the term keef, our separation of trichome heads themselves. In a very basic way, in a hand grinder, you can end up seeing separation there. So that in itself is an extraction method as well. That method has been scaled up. Obviously, there's large-scale methods of extraction like that. Those are solventless based extractions. Then you can get into a solvent based extraction, and you'll hear the three big ones that you hear industry leaders right now are CO2, hydrocarbon, and ethanol. Those are the three major outlets for large scale manufacturing and extraction. Of those, I prefer CO2, not simply because I came from Apex, but also because I look at it from a medicinal point of view. I feel like it's safer to have it's a cleaner product, and so it's safer for our bodies to use a CO2 extraction method. But with that being said, I mean, there's manufacturing on all types of levels, depending on what your desired end product is and what market you're trying to reach. In recreational world, there's going to be some products that are developed in butane and that are very desirable still. The ethanol seems to be, especially in the hemp world, I would say ethanol is big because ethanol has the ability for large-scale operations. And in the hemp industry right now, we're noticing that that's a lot different than it was in the cannabis world, because we're growing large fields of hemp now. So we have thousands of pounds to process per day versus 100 or 200 pounds in the cannabis world. So ethanol becomes a viable option if you have a large-scale system like that.
Thank you for that explanation. A lot of people ask about what processing is and extraction is, and so that really drives home what people are looking for.
Sure, and I think that the key is if you're concerned about your product, it's good to do your homework, do your research, look into what you're purchasing, look at how it was manufactured. I know different states will allow, like even in a butane world, there's an acceptable ppm or parts per million that you can look into your product. If you're taking this for medicine, it's probably not the best way to get it. So ask and understand what you're looking for and source out and seek from your dispensaries a CO2 or a clean product like that. Basically, those products are considered safe because we're able to remove the solvents after the extraction process. So they're still considered a safe product.
Absolutely. So if someone is watching you today and is interested in learning to do what you do right now, what would you say is their first step?
Wow, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge out there now compared to what there was even just 5 short years ago when I started to get into this. So the YouTube videos are huge. There's a lot of things on that as well. I feel like we're very fortunate now also to have an outlet like the Cleveland School of Cannabis. I mean, it's just a few short years ago, I wouldn't have imagined this legalization of cannabis on this level at all. And now to think that we can have an outlet, a source, a school where we can collectively come together and share and bounce ideas off each other is fantastic. So I think that, and I just had an opportunity before this to speak with a group for the Green Hour, and I told them the same thing. The most important thing is maintain that work ethic. Work hard at whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it, and then have that passion. You know, self-educate is a big thing, but then also take advantage of an outlet like the Cleveland School of Cannabis. You know, there's so much knowledge here to be shared with everybody.
Yeah. Very good. I appreciate that. So with every session with the Cannabis Marketplace, we like to take a question from either my patients or from social media submissions. Okay. So today's Green Harvest Health patient question is from Lynette Scheidecker from Sunbury, Ohio. Her question for you is, how do you feel about adding artificial terpenes or essential oils to an extraction product?
There's two ways that we can look at this, and this conversation came up earlier as well today. From a large-scale manufacturing point of view, when there are a lot of products to put out, in some cases it may be easier to buy the synthetic terpenes put in. There's debate, I mean, on a very chemical level, the terpenes are the same, right? But what really comes down to is the purist and the people who want to stay as true and pure to the plant as possible. It becomes very important for them to make sure that every fraction of oil that is extracted from that plant comes from the same plant. That means the terpenes would be extracted first, and they're set off to the side, and then continue out the extraction process to pull different fractions of oil to develop different products. So I think that those synthetic terps, or the terps that they use like that on a large scale, are not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're looking at it from a point of a purist and you want to stay as true to the plant as possible, then it's important to reach out those ones that were sourced directly from the same cultivar.
Very good. Extraction is changing the face of our modern cannabis industry. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us today, Joel. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about 4Evergreen Advisory Services?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Always good to be involved with the school and talk with people from the school here. You can reach out to me through my email, which would be live4evergreen@yahoo.com. That's LIVE, the number 4, evergreen@yahoo.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions, so please feel free to reach out.
Very good. Thank you, Joel Hatfield. I appreciate you being with us here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Absolutely. With every episode of the Cannabis Marketplace, we like to feature a cannabis business that is doing great things in our community. Today's business is Galenas, a level 1 cultivation center right in Akron, Ohio.
So today we're harvesting here at Galenas. The strain we're harvesting is called Banana Hammock. We have 180 of these plants that we're going to harvest today. So I'm going to show you guys basically how to remove the trellis, how to take down one of the plants, where the plant goes next. So the plant's going to be hung, and then it's going to be weighed by our quality control specialist, and then the plant will be defoliated. I'm going to hang this one up, and then we'll start cutting down the trellis.